So welcome to today's interview, where we have a very special guest, Bianca Sansom. Bianca, would you mind please telling me what it is exactly that you do?
Sure. So I'm currently the General Manager at the Center for Proteomics and Genomics Research. So I help a lot out with not only the project management aspects, but business development aspect as well. So I oversee a lot of the platforms and the research projects that are going on. I deal a lot with clients, getting new clients in and making people aware of what the CPGR does.
Okay. What does the CPGR stand for, by the way?
So it stands for the Center of Proteomics and Genomic Research.
Oh, okay. Center. And as a whole, what does the Center of Proteomics and Genomics research do?
So we are obviously experts in the field of omics, which means we have basically two fields: the genomics aspect, where we do a lot of microarray based work, molecular work with RT-PCR gene expression. We have a sequencing facility. And then on the other hand, we have the proteomics side, which focuses more on mass spectrometry. Obviously, every day we're bringing in new and exciting tests and applications into to the scientific community in order to help grow. I want to say, instead of sending tests or samples overseas, to rather do it locally.
Yeah, that's always a good thing if you do, because it encourages starting this type of thing and biotech companies and this type of thing in South Africa rather than always having to import it from other countries and that type of thing.
Yes.
In your experience, what would you say is the biggest difference between the industry and sort of coming from an academic background?
So it depends on which way you look at it and what industry people refer to. So obviously you've got your, I want to say, private or laboratory-based industries, which are more of your pathology-based labs. And then you do have, like what we are, the Center for Proteomics and Genomics Research, where we do service commercial clients as well as research clients. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is I would say the strict turnaround times that we adhere to. So we get a project in, we give them a turnaround time, and we deliver on that.
Okay. Yeah, so you would say it's almost adhering to this high supply and demand type thing.
Yes.
All right. So in a year, how many, because I know usually in an academic capacity, whether it's a master's or a PhD, there's a set time where they expect you to complete it, but with this type of thing, the turnaround times that you're talking about, is that over a year, over a month? What's the general timeline for those turnaround times?
So it really depends on the project. So we have commercial clients, which I would say send us routine samples. These routine samples have short turnaround times of 10 days. Then on the other hand, we do bigger, more collaborative projects, and these could consist of 6,000 samples, for example, and we give ourselves basically 6 months in which to do that. The advantage that we have here is obviously we are equipped for high throughput. We have the automation to assist with that as well. And then the instrumentation, the automated loaders, which then just improves our throughput capacity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, in industry, you want your output to be as high as possible. So you mentioned collaborations now. Would you say that there's almost more collaboration when you're working in industry versus when you're working in the academic sector, or fewer?
Probably fewer collaborations compared to the academia, but at the end of the day, the academics will still send samples to the CPGR to process. Yeah. So although we may not be directly involved in that collaboration, we are the laboratory that they use to generate the data. but there are several consortiums that we support. So, for example, we are part of the H3 Africa consortium. So that is a special GSA array that was designed with special markers for the African population. So there are basically two instruments that service the consortium. The one's in America and the one is here situated with us. So any project that involves H3 Africa arrays, people automatically send it to us. So there is still collaboration happening, just maybe on a smaller scale.
Yeah. And this collaboration, is it mostly with universities or is it sometimes with other companies as well? Because you mentioned sample sizes, so I'm assuming that would be other companies then.
Yeah. So I suppose you also have to decide on what your definition of collaboration is.
Yeah.
So it's mostly university institutions, but we do also, when we say collaborations, we do have several commercial-based clients that we support on a continuous basis, and they look at us for our expertise in order to service their clients as well. So technically that is a collaboration as well. That we look to.
All right. In terms of sort of difficulty, because you mentioned that in the company you have a high throughput, so obviously the scale of what you're doing versus what you would do in the academic field is much larger. So in terms of the sort of difficulty, which would you say is more challenging, academic or working in industry?
Definitely working in industry, without a doubt. I feel the research side of things is still very relaxed, where with industry, it's high pressure, quick turnaround times. We register over 120 projects a year that we service.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, so, that's not even a competition then.
Yeah.
So how would you compare sort of the path that you have to walk to become an academic versus the path that you have to walk? So for instance, someone like me who's finishing postgraduate studies now, where would you go from here to be a person that works in industry versus what you would do rather to be an academic?
So I think this is probably one of the most difficult areas and decision-making choices, because I do feel that the universities probably don't equip students enough with an understanding of what is out there. So, for example, if you decide that you want to stay in the laboratory medical field, then you would be looking at maybe working at a pathology lab like AMPATH, Lancet, NHLS. And what a lot of people don't tell you about is the fact that you require an HPCSA registration to work in these type of medical laboratories. So that involves obviously going to go do an internship in order to become registered.
Yeah.
Then there's institutions such as the CPGR or the MRC, which is more research focused but industrial. And then this is obviously where a lot of people will still have the ability to also pursue their own personal research interests, but within a bigger, larger environment. So those would be, you need to decide which two options you want to go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it doesn't end there. I mean, another big aspect of science that's coming in now is big data. So although you might start out as a microbiologist or a geneticist, it doesn't mean that you can't transition into becoming a bioinformatician.
That's almost necessary these days.
Yeah. So, I mean, all the courses in your R and your Linux, I mean, do as much of that as possible, because it doesn't go away and it's not easy just to find someone else to do it. So, people shouldn't forget about that potential as well.
Yeah.
In their careers.
How did you experience the shift in going from, as you mentioned now, the bioinformatics and the molecular work to being someone who's more in a managerial position? Do you still do a lot of hands-on lab work or wet bench work, or not really?
Unfortunately, sadly, no. I wish I could. I do obviously go down into the lab every day just to make sure nothing's fallen apart. But unfortunately, I don't get my hands wet or dirty in the lab work anymore as much as I used to. But it's not to say it's a bad thing. You've got to progress So
Of
yeah.
course, yeah. So would you say what you're doing is satisfying? Is it a satisfying job?
I love what I do. I love science. So I can just give you a little bit of information about me so that you also understand. So I left university after my honors because I actually wanted to see what was out in the field. And I really struggled for 6 months to find a job until someone enlightened me about this HPCSA registration. So I went out, I found an internship. It was a 2-year internship to become registered as a medical scientist. And I was very grateful for that opportunity. And in the meantime, I actually studying an LLB because then I thought I'd transition to becoming a patent attorney. After qualifying as a medical scientist and working in the lab for about 3.5 years, I left science completely to do my articles. And I'll tell you, that was the worst year of my life. I now know I don't want to be a lawyer.
All right.
So I then actually went back into science. I got an opportunity to do my master's, and then subsequent from that, my PhD, which I did part-time. It is a challenge, but I will never discourage anyone from studying. They should never, think that just because they work, they can't study. And yeah, and now I've progressed from being an intern to a qualified scientist to being an article clerk, back to a scientist, to a lab manager, now a general manager. So it's been a good career path. And yeah, now I'm still studying. I'm doing my MBA. So keep moving forward.
Yeah. The career path that you describe is something that I very much am drawn to, because I'm also interested in doing the LLB or at least the PG dip in law, and I'm also interested in doing an MBA, and everything that you described now is something that I'm interested in. So I have to ask you, what advice would you give someone like me going from academic now to working and being able to study and being able to do all of the things that you did, being able to walk the path? Is there any advice that you could give?
Just stay focused on what you want. Don't get discouraged. There are days where it's really difficult, and many people come to you and they're like, how do you do it? And it's just all about focus. If you know what you want and you have a dream, stay focused and you'll get there. Don't let anyone discourage you.
That's such good advice. When it comes to future plans, would you ever see yourself going back to a more research or a more academic, or do you think the future is more industry for you?
I think the future is more industry.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I like money.
So that's another question. So there's definitely more money in industry than there is in the academic field then?
Not necessarily. Look, if you get a good lecturing post at a university and start awesome laboratories, with brand names and support, you definitely will be in a good financial position. But I think when I like to see companies grow. I love the business development. I like the client engagement, to see, what I can do for them, how I can grow a business by offering further support. So that to me is very exciting, and why I would probably stay in industry and not go back to academia, because I think you lack that client engagement.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. I personally have learned a lot, and I actually have a lot to think about whether I want to stay in academia or whether I want to go into industry now. And I just have to say it was really lovely to talk to you and ask you all of these questions. It was very, very informative as well. So thank you so much for taking the time and talking to me today. Yeah.
And obviously, if anyone does want advice or career guidance, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
I don't mind.
Thank you very much. All right, Bianca, pleasure. I'm gonna greet goodbye, and thank you once again.
Perfect. Thanks. Bye.
Cheerio.